Hello and welcome to Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. This is April 9th, 2013, and I'm Faithless Forrest.
And I'm Maurice Severson, and we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you are not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and people curious about living a life free of supernatural beliefs.
This is a call-in show, and a little later we'll invite you to start calling in, and we want you to know that we have only one phone line. So if you cannot get through, we invite you to tweet us comments at FFTVKNOX. The show is a product of the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee, with individual supporters and guests.
Today, if the technology is with us, we hope to have a phone interview with Teresa MacBain, former minister, now atheist.
First, we want to thank you, the viewers, for being with us today, and now let's thank our sponsors.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun meetup, often at a bar or restaurant. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's Taproom and Pizzeria. It's during happy hour after the show for food, drink, and conversation. To find us, just look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table, and it actually already probably is. There's people probably already there.
Yeah, they start about 5:30.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the Rationalists of East Tennessee have monthly activities on the first and third Sunday mornings. They're usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday of the month is an afternoon book club. We'll say more about that at the mid-program break. The fourth Sunday is the Reflections Gathering, which is a potluck afternoon get-together at a member's home with a discussion topic. During March of 2012, ASK and RET members traveled to Washington for the Reason Rally. And just last month, some of the members made a road trip, a pilgrimage, if you will. We went to see Richard Dawkins and Herb Silverman in Charleston, South Carolina. It was great. All right, well, we don't have anything in the news. You didn't bring anything in the news? Well, let's see if we can engage our technology and try and call Teresa MacBain. And, whoops. Yeah, I'm sure more entertaining television has hardly ever existed.
Hello.
Hello, Teresa. This is Faithless Forrest and
Maurice Severson.
And you're on the air with us here.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Okie doke.
Good.
We're having a great day up here in Tennessee, where spring has finally come. And if you care to, share with us and the viewers, where are you today and how's it there?
I'm in Tallahassee, Florida. That's my home, and it's a gorgeous, sunny day. I think it was 85 today, which is pretty nice, low humidity. It won't last very long in Florida. It'll be 100 degrees and high humidity, so I enjoyed the day while I can get it.
All right. Well, that's great. We thank you for agreeing to speak with us today. It was about a little over a year ago, I guess, I learned about you when you became, I believe, what's referred to as the first female graduate of the Clergy Project.
Right.
And so I guess one of the things maybe we ought to cover is what the Clergy Project is, and could you help us and the viewers understand that?
Sure. The Clergy Project is a group, it's an online safe house support group type of atmosphere, and it exists for clergy persons who they don't have a belief in the supernatural, agnostic or atheist, and it is a place where they can come. As I did, I was an active pastor when I found the Clergy Project. And you're screened and vetted, and then you're brought into the group, and it basically exists a bunch of clergy persons, over 440 now, I believe, who support and encourage each other as we try to work our way out of the ministry.
All right. Well, that's kind of interesting. And when I learned about the Clergy Project, well, I guess it was also in the context about Dan Barker, who is also a former minister who left. When Dan Barker came and visited us here in East Tennessee some years ago, and so that was the first time I had met in person a clergy who had left. And it made more real something that prior to that had seemed only kind of almost hypothetical or almost maybe nonsensical, and it was about something that I read in Some Mistakes of Moses by Robert Ingersoll. And Aris and I wanted to share with you a little of this and maybe ask how it might feel to you. All right.
Okay.
It begins like this. Ingersoll writes, "That which has happened in most countries has happened in ours. When a religion is founded, the educated, the powerful, that is to say, the priests and nobles, tell the ignorant and superstitious, that is to say, the people, that the religion of their country was given to their fathers by God Himself. That it is the only true religion, that all others were conceived in falsehood and brought forth in fraud, and that all who believe in the true religion will be happy forever, while all others will burn in hell. For the purpose of governing the people, that is to say, for the purpose of being supported by the people, the priests and nobles declared this religion to be sacred, and that whoever adds to it or takes from it will be burned here by man and hereafter by God. The result of this is that the priests and nobles will not allow the people to change. And when after a time the priests, having intellectually advanced, wish to take a step in the direction of progress, the people will not allow them to change. At first the rabble are enslaved by the priests, and afterward the rabble become the masters."
One of the first things I wish to do is to free the Orthodox clergy. I am a great friend of theirs, and in spite of all they may say against me, I am going to do them a great and lasting service. Upon their necks are visible the marks of the collar, and upon their backs are those of the lash. They are not allowed to read and think for themselves. They are taught like parrots, and the best are those who repeat, with the fewest mistakes, the sentences they have been taught. They sit like owls upon some dead limb of the tree of knowledge, and hoot the same old hoots they have hooted for 1800 years. Their congregations are not grand enough nor sufficiently civilized to be willing that the poor preachers shall think for themselves. They are not employed for that purpose. Investigation is regarded as a dangerous experiment, and the ministers are warned that none of that kind of work will be tolerated. They are notified to stand by the old creed and to avoid all original thought as a mortal pestilence. Every minister is employed like an attorney, either for plaintiff or defendant, and he is expected to be true to his client. If he changes his mind, he is regarded as a deserter and denounced, hated, and slandered accordingly. Every Orthodox clergy agrees not to change. He contracts not to find new facts and makes a bargain that he will deny them if he does.
So that's just a small passage, and when I read it the first time, I almost thought Ingersoll wasn't so much serious, and then it was after meeting people like Dan Barker that I realized, my goodness, he was on to something. Did any of that speak to you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, wow. I mean, it's absolutely true. Especially the passage where he begins talking about freeing the Orthodox clergy. And I was just remembering growing up and then going to school and learning my craft as being a pastor. And it's exactly right. We're taught to repeat what we're told, to participate or to lead our congregations in the way that they want to be led, like we're an attorney with a client. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard professors say that, that especially in Methodism, I could have, basically, my particular beliefs were really of no importance. I had to present to the congregation what they viewed as their particular set. You know, not that it veered a lot from the basic tenets, but, you know, one group may be a little more leaning toward this doctrine and the others toward that. So, but it's still the same principle. You represent your client and keep your mouth shut about everything else.
Wow, that's an interesting insight there. It occurred to me that what I know of the biography of Ingersoll is that his father was a minister, and his father didn't do that. In particular, his father was very abolitionist in promoting the abolition, the destruction of slavery. And in that sense, he often challenged his congregation, and they were sent packing, so to speak. All right.
Yeah.
So you grew up in the Methodist tradition, and that's where then you ministered?
No, actually, I grew up in the Baptist tradition. My dad was a Baptist pastor. We were very conservative, very much. It wasn't called fundamentalism back then, but that's exactly what we were. I actually came into the Methodist Church after some years of just, it always felt like I was supposed to be a pastor, that God had called me from the time I was 6 years old. But unfortunately for me, I was a woman. And in the Baptist church, women were not allowed to minister. And I think it's so hard to look back, especially when such a huge transformation has happened. It's hard to look back and say, oh, this was the beginning or that was the beginning. But I know the issue of being a woman, feeling like God had called me, yet being told by my faith, by my belief system, that women aren't good enough. I think that was one of the things that pushed me to dig deeper and look for more answers. Because by the time I came into the Methodist Church and became a pastor, obviously I'd moved away from being very conservative into a more moderate, liberal theology.
All right. Well, I'll confess a kind of ignorance here. I've grown up a non-believer, and so distinctions about different Christian denominations are largely opaque to me. Could you give me a thumbnail sketch of how that might be, of how the two might differ?
Sure. There's a lot of ways, but the biggest things, I think, Baptists are typically ones that are, they believe in the inerrancy of the Bible. That means every single word is absolutely 100% spoken by God and accurate, factual. No mistakes, nothing.
No room for interpretation.
Yeah.
Oh, teacher, I have a question then. Having read the Bible once and without any notes or anything to help me interpret it, I still notice things like there are passages in the New Testament, I think they even may be attributed to the same author, where they say things like we are saved by faith alone, and then elsewhere it will say we are saved by works and faith. Mm-hmm. And do they not see a contradiction in that, or do they have an explanation?
There's an explanation. That's one of the things that popped out when I was in the 8th grade. I noticed those things because I would read my Bible and study it. I thought that this is my calling, so I had to be prepared, But I did notice such a contradiction. I went to my father, and the answer he gave is the answer you will always be given, and that is, we take these things by faith. And if we don't understand them, it's because we're not God. How could we understand God? We're just human beings. And there's a passage of Scripture in the Old Testament that says God's ways are higher than our ways, and His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And I can't tell you how many times I was told that to the point that I tell people when I've given my talk on my story that the first time I encountered that, and my dad gave me that answer of this is about faith and equated my questioning to a lack of faith. Yeah. That imprinted on me a message that said that when I have doubts, that means my faith is weak or I have a lack of faith, and that's sin. And for any Christian denomination, or probably any religious denomination, sin is the absolute last thing you want. That's being displeasing, it's wrong. God hates sin. And that kept me from digging around for a long time because I didn't want to be, I didn't want God to hate me,
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So that's in a nutshell, that's probably the biggest teaching of the Baptists, is that the Bible is inerrant. And it's a lot of works-based, even though they'll say it's by faith you are saved through grace and not of works in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. But it is about works. You work hard, you study hard, you prove yourself worthy, basically, through works. In the Baptist faith, and there's a lot more to it. Oh my goodness, trying to narrow it down is hard. Methodism is different in that they don't believe the Bible is inerrant. They believe the Bible is our guidebook for faith and practice. They believe there are certain things that you follow that are like the baseline. You know, God the Father, Jesus Christ, His only Son, and the Holy Spirit. You know, the Trinity, salvation by faith, and those kinds of things. But then everything else you can study and question and interpret basically for yourself. So you can see when I came into the Methodist belief system and, and I'd progressed that far, you can see where it was kind of the beginning and the end, because finally they were giving me permission to ask questions and to not feel dirty and sinful every time I had a thought or a question or a doubt.
All right. Well, great. So you became a minister, and where did you do this, and maybe for how long?
I became a minister, all of it was in Florida. I've been in Florida since for quite a long while in one area or another. But I first began working in ministry. It's hard for a woman, no matter what the denomination, it's hard for a woman to break into a man's world of ministry. So I worked in children's ministry. I worked as a music pastor. I worked as an associate pastor, as a young adult pastor. I worked in nursing homes, and pretty much I've done a little bit of it all.
A lot of traditional women's roles.
Pardon?
A lot of traditional women's roles, caring for children.
Yes, very much so. Now, eventually, I was given an assignment as senior pastor to the church, and 15 years, I would say, in a couple of different churches as a senior pastor. So, that just took me a long time to get there because, like you said, these are traditional women's roles. Women have their place, men have their place, and women's place is usually under men.
Yeah.
So did I hear you right? You said for about 15 years,
Yep.
Then you were ministering? So
Yes.
then, because you're talking to us here today, something changed. Maybe you can tell us about that.
There were some changes. For a very long time, I didn't recognize them. And it's only, they say hindsight's 20/20. Well, that's absolutely true. I think beginning when I first saw those questions, even though I was a middle school girl, I tried to suppress them. But, if you study psychology or anything else, you can't really suppress things. They find a way of coming out. So every time I would see something like that and stick it in the back of my mind, it didn't go away. It was just kind of pacing back there, waiting for a crack to break out. And slowly over time, as I was pursuing God's call to be a pastor in my life, and I moved through the phases of becoming less fundamentalist evangelical Christian to more liberal, Methodism, little cracks and little, things started to break through. The Bible was probably the biggest thing for me, because once I came into Methodist Church, I was told, hold on to these core teachings. You can interpret and study and do your research in the others. But at the same time, being told a contradictory statement in seminary saying, whatever you think is fine, but you must find out what your congregation believes and you teach that. Just don't tell them what you think in your head.
Right.
So that right there caused me to really dig in and just see what the Bible had to say. And there were so many contradictions. I mean, I took notebooks and would just sit down and write contradiction after contradiction and try to prove it and try to rationalize it and try to find answers without relying on what somebody before me had said, like the Ingersoll statement said, like parroting something somebody else had said. And that took me a very long time. And then I think in reality, by the time I got down to the end of that, I had at least become a deist. And from that point on,
Teresa, could you help our viewers help our viewers. Tell our viewers what a deist is, because we can't assume that.
A deist is, in my interpretation, someone who believes there's a God somewhere out there. That God is not necessarily, well, it's not any of what the major religions follow, and this person, I don't know if I would say typically they follow any religious tenets or not. But for the most part, it's just basically that there is a God. I don't know who he is, but I believe there's a God.
Okay. Have you ever read Thomas Paine's declaration of his deism?
Yes, I have read that.
Yeah, it was a very insightful thing for me to read. I read his Age of Reason, and I think I read his declaration of deism after Age of Reason, and I was actually a little surprised by it, because it kind of felt like it was a backwards step, that Age of Reason seemed to less room for supernatural. But I guess actually in the beginning of Age of Reason, he does say he believes in one and only one God and hopes for a state of an afterlife.
Yeah. Deism is kind of a hard, at least for me and the people I know who've expressed deism, and I think some of these labels that we use are open to a broader range of interpretation than we say a lot of times. But I guess a deist in itself, believing that there's a God, believes there's some type of supernatural. And whether it takes the shape of good and evil, angels, demons, afterlife, no afterlife. Would you say, do you think it would mean that maybe there's an interpretation that a deist could believe in an afterlife or not? Deist is kind of one for me that's hard to nail down.
Yeah, there's not a specific set of doctrine that go with it. There's no governing body like with the Baptists or the Methodists or the Catholics.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot more interpretive to each person.
Yeah.
So you've described kind of how you were changing, but I would think that the act of contacting the Clergy Project has got to have been kind of the word watershed moment seems to be an understatement.
Yeah, I moved from this deistic existence, and my deism took the shape of, I believe there's a God, and based upon your culture and how you were raised is how you try to connect to that God. So basically, all the religions of the world were equally valid to me, because we were all just trying to get to know that God. Now, that did not last very long. I quickly moved into somewhat of an agnosticism, where I didn't know whether there was a God or whether there wasn't. And I would go back and forth. Now, I don't know if that's true agnosticism or not, but that was one of the places, and I stuck there for about a year, fighting with myself. I would feel like I was making a breakthrough and gaining some understanding and some knowledge, and then I would say, oh, no, this can't be true, this can't be true. How are you believing that? How in the world could you even think those things? You're just going through a bad place, and you'll pray, and I'd try to pray my way through it and study my way through it, but the more I did the study, the worse it got, to eventually, in 2011, early May, I think, I got on the internet. I was absolutely desperate to find out answers, and I Googled pastors who feel they're losing their faith.
Wow.
And Dan Barker's book, Godless, popped up first thing on my screen. The little synopsis said he was a pastor, lost his faith, this is his story, and I grabbed that book immediately at Amazon and read it, and then I called Dan, or I called FFRF, left a message for him, Christian Freedom from Religion Foundation, and he called me back and told me, we talked, and then he said, we just started this thing called the Clergy Project, and shared with me about it and asked if I wanted to participate. Of course I said yes. I was desperate to connect to somebody who was just as crazy as I was, or at least I felt like I was going crazy. But yeah, it was a lifesaver for me. Truly a lifesaver.
Teresa, do you know how many ministers were a participant when you joined the Clergy Project?
Yeah, there were. I think there were about 55. It had just started, hadn't been around. There were 52 originally that were a part of the Clergy Project.
Okay.
And I was somewhere around 55, 56.
Okay, and I visited their website today, and they claim 440 plus members.
Yeah.
Wow. So how many have graduated? Do you know?
3.
Oh my goodness. Oh well,
it's hard. I mean, it's.
Yeah.
Jerry DeWitt came out of ministry and was working a secular job, and then someone found out about him being at Texas Freethought through just a weird set of circumstances with Facebook, and so he was quote unquote outed. So he was the first person that happened to.
Yeah, both Lee and I were basically brought up secular all through childhood, and of course most of the people who live here and most of the people who are members of both RET and Ask with us were brought up very strictly religious, and it's hard enough for them to come out because of the fear of loss of jobs and family and friends, but if you're clergy, I mean the pressure. Yeah. I mean, so much of your identity has got to be tied up with being a minister and, feeling like you're helping people and that's the most legitimate way to help people. So that had to have been very difficult. So, yeah. Transitioning especially to finding secular jobs. I saw some of your other interviews, and your training, is not necessarily something that translates easily to other jobs. Obviously, you have organizational skills and things like that, but, I know that that's a lot of the support that they offer to the clergy is trying to help them get their resumes together and trying to translate the skills they have.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I mean, Jerry came out in the open, I don't know, I think in December, I came out in March. Of course, I wasn't outed. I outed myself, and I did it in a public way. And I knew it was going to be tough, but I had no idea how tough. I had no idea how, like you said, it's hard when anybody comes out. Yeah. Absolutely difficult. But I think the sense of betrayal when a clergy person comes out is great. It's a very large factor. And I also think people are very afraid because they think, well, this person who was this super spiritual, more knowledgeable, trained and educated in the ways of God, if they could lose their faith, what does that mean? I don't think they consciously think that, but I think it would definitely put a little fear in them. And for me, grew up as a pastor's kid, served in ministry all my adult life up to the point of being a pastor. I remember, even now, I struggle figuring out what it means to live without church and religion. I don't know how to. I've never had anything out of that world. It'd be almost like if you took me, I'm from the South, I'm from Alabama, and you picked me up and you put me in China by myself without any language skills or anything. It would be a definite culture shock. Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of a good break to take because I'd really like to get into talking about the developing of the support and the community after our break, but we need to do a quick break for the program.
Yeah, so if you'll hold on the line here, we're going to do our sort of sponsor identification moment here.
Okay.
So, for those of you watching, in case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Community Access Television. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
This is a call-in show, and we are live today, April 9th. And viewers can call in now to the number on the screen right below us, or tweet them to us at FFTVKnox.
All right. The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, meets 2 times a week. We have meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, and freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Go to meetup.com and search for Atheists and Knoxville to find the group. Sam, can we get our promotional video at this point? All right. Waiting. There it goes.
Family and the rest of our society will take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
To do the RET video then.
You'll read this.
Yeah, but I'm not going to ask you to do it. The Rationalists of East Tennessee has Sunday activities involving lively presentations and discussions of subjects topical and timeless. Once a month, we get together for a book club. You need not to have read the book to attend, but of course it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find us.
And Sam, do we get the next
Do you
video?
find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
You want to do both?
Both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you will find that if you do not believe in God, you are not alone.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee Book Club upcoming books, April the 14th, this Sunday, is Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. May the 12th is Answers for Aristotle, How Science and Philosophy Can Lead Us to a More Meaningful Life by Massimo Pigliucci. And June the 9th is Collapse, How Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed, revised edition by Jared Diamond, who also wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel.
All right. Well, we're coming back to the program here. Today we're interviewing Teresa MacBain, the first female graduate of the Clergy Project. Well, Teresa, then, are you the second graduate or the third graduate in total?
Well, Jerry came out, and then Mike House, who's in Houston, and myself, we both came out at the American Atheist Convention in Bethesda last year.
All right. So that was kind of a dramatic way to come out. How big was the crowd there to welcome you into the New World View?
I think it was around 1,000 people.
All right. Well,
it was full.
I've seen the video on YouTube, but of course it's the videos of you, and I had no idea how big the audience was, other than an impression that it was a large crowd.
Yeah, it was such a moment. I mean, the crowd was large, and remember, I'd been working in front of people for a very long time, but I was so nervous seeing all those folks, and the size of the crowd. Once you've seen the video, I declared that I was an atheist. The applause literally was thunderous because of just the size of the people. And yeah, it was a moment that I won't forget ever.
All right. Well, so now it's a little over a year since this change. What's happened in this year? And maybe we should invite callers to give us a ring on the number, and you can ask Teresa about her change of worldview.
Okay, the past year obviously, after I came out, I was unemployed. And I came back home to, instead of finding a warm welcome, which I honestly didn't expect, but I did find a very harsh doesn't even do it justice, just a very hard reality that people hated me and threatened my family.
Wow.
I didn't go outside for a while because it was just too much. I didn't want people to see me. I didn't want to confront. I was basically shell-shocked. But long story short, I kind of went through those few months, applied for a job with American Atheist in New Jersey and was hired as their public relations director. I worked up there for them for a little over 8 months, and then the Humanist of Florida Association had an executive director position that they approached me about, and was hired, and now I'm here in Florida, and I'm working as their executive director.
All right. Well, Teresa, we've got a caller waiting here. We're going to push the button, put them on, and we hope everyone can hear one another.
Okay.
Hello, caller. Can you give us a name or a nickname so that we know how to address you?
Hi, my name's Jed.
Hello, did we hear Jed?
No, Jeff.
Jeff. Okay, Jeff. And do you have a question for Teresa or us here?
My neighbor's atheist, and I was just wondering, what is the mind of an atheist, I'm not an atheist myself, but I was just wondering, what goes through your guys' mind when you're thinking about, how did the first person come down on Earth or something like that?
All right. Well, Teresa, do you want to try and field that question?
Yeah, it broke up a good bit. I couldn't really understand.
Okay. Jeff was saying that he has a neighbor who is an atheist, and
okay.
Oh goodness, Aris, help me here.
He was wondering what atheists think as to the origin of humanity on the earth.
Okay.
As opposed to someone who would believe in, for example, creationism.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. All right. I gotcha. So the two positions, basically, that everybody talks about is either creationism, which is, in America, typically the Christian view. Adam and Eve, God created the heavens and the earth, etc. Versus what atheists, agnostics, skeptics, secularist scientists all believe, and that is the theory of evolution. Atheists, here's the thing that I appreciate about atheists and atheism, is when it comes to things that are beyond our understanding, we admit to it, or at least I admit to it, and say, hey, evolution is the theory, evolution has been shown, yet it goes so far back, and then we're still in this learning process, this learning phase. Versus when I was a fundamentalist Christian, I said, no, that's not true at all. The Bible says God did it this way, and that's it, and I don't want to hear any more about it, basically. So those are the two divergent viewpoints. So how do I think people got here? Well, it's evolution.
And while it's not part of the evangelical tradition, I have lots of friends, especially in other parts of the country, who are Christians who also believe in evolution. So it's not just that evolution is necessarily an atheist or an agnostic idea.
Right. Yeah, that's what
if that helps, Jeff.
When I was growing up.
Jeff, have we answered your question, Jeff?
I just have another question related to that.
All right, let's do that quick, and then we'll make some progress maybe with some other callers too.
And what?
Yeah, can I ask my question?
Yes, please.
Oh, sorry about that. All right. My friend, he's married to a Muslim, and she tells me that in their holy book or whatnot, they have some proof about everyday things in their holy book. For example, she was reading a passage, and it was describing a light in a small sphere that they used for light, and it predicts that there's going to be small spheres of light that lead people And I got really interested in that, so I decided to Google it. And the Muslim scholars have translated that to light bulbs. So I was just wondering, like, you know, what do y'all think about that?
Well, Jeff, we definitely believe that light bulbs exist. There's a lot of evidence for that. I don't believe that the Quran addresses them directly, but thank you for sharing your time. Goodbye.
All righty. Well, yeah, I've never heard that the Quran has predicted light bulbs before.
I don't believe so.
What I have heard is that the Quran also talks about God split the moon in half and put it back together again for their prophet, whose name escapes
Muhammad.
me. Muhammad. And you know,
Muhammad, yes.
that one's kind of a hard one to swallow. All right. Well, so you were describing your first year for us, Teresa, and you went up to work in New Jersey, and you grew up in Florida. Did you spend a winter up there?
Partially, yes.
Oh, was that kind of a transition of itself?
Oh my goodness, I can't even explain it to you.
Now, your family went up there. I'm sorry, I talked over you.
Well, I have a coworker who was there in the office with me, and he has absolutely lived through cold winters and cold weather. And I would come in and have on 2 pairs of socks, some long underwear, another undershirt, a t-shirt, a long sleeve shirt, a fleece jacket, and then my jacket. I can't tell you how much I got picked on because I just could not handle the cold. Plus the fact that I didn't know this about the area in New Jersey before, but most of the trees are deciduous trees, and they lose all their leaves. The grass turns brown. The skies are gray. That is totally different than Florida.
Yeah. Well, I like to describe myself as a refugee from winter. I came from Minnesota, and Reese?
I am hoping to get back to winter. I'm one of those people that we're heading into the part of the year here that I dread: 90-degree temperatures and 90% humidity. So,
but you're originally from even colder
I was born.
climate than I am?
Well, it's about the same. South Dakota's pretty close. So, but yeah,
Right.
when I was in school in Indiana, the river froze solid one year. So.
Wow.
Well, Teresa, we've got another call here.
I'm sorry.
We have another caller on the line. Let's see if we can make this work.
Hi, caller. Are you with us?
I am.
Cool. Do we have a name or a nickname to call you by?
I'm Chuck.
Chuck? Okay. And did you have a question or a comment for Teresa?
Yeah, I have a question for your guest. I'd like to know if dispensationalism played any part in her ministry and her decision to leave. And the same question with regard to others in the Clergy Project. And I'll hang up and wait for your answer.
Okay. You can just listen if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Teresa, did you get Chuck's question?
Yeah, well, part of it, I think he asked me if I was a dispensationalist.
He asked if that played any part of the ministry, and if that maybe had a part in causing people to leave the church.
No, I mean,
If you could explain what that is as well.
I gave up on that was growing up in the Baptist church. We believed in the dispensational thought theology, but you know, I found just, I don't know, the dispensational theology, that's a big one as well that's very difficult to explain. Which a lot of theology is difficult to explain, but I gave up on that a long time before I felt like I was walking away from my faith. And so really, I don't think it had anything to do with it at all.
Okay. So the second part of Chuck's question was to ask, are other members of the Clergy Project maybe affected by that? Or would you know?
Probably. Well, I wouldn't know. I mean, it's a possibility, but now with over 440 members, we have every Christian faith represented. We have Muslims, Jehovah's Witnesses, we have Scientology, Mormons, I mean, and it's difficult. I'm sure some of the ones that are more fundamental probably believed in the dispensations, but I would not even know where to begin to give you a number on that.
All right. Well, Chuck, did you have any follow-up question on that?
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you for calling.
All right. So I guess I was just imagining myself in your shoes coming from Florida up to cold winter, and that took us off the subject, though, of leaving the faith. I guess I've also noticed that you received a kind of an award here. You were Atheist of the Year. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, that actually happened at the American Atheist Convention, and during the awards ceremony, I did not have any knowledge whatsoever about it, nor did I didn't even consider it was a possibility. I was sitting in the back, and they announced, time for the Atheist of the Year award. My mind, of course, went to a few people thinking, oh, this person, that person. They started to describe me as coming to the Reason Rally and the Atheist Convention as Lynn, not out in the open. And I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, that they were going to give this award to me. And I got up there on the stage and I received the award. And let me just read what the plaque says, because it really means a lot to me. It says, to Teresa MacBain for leading the way and showing those who are still in the closet how to come out and to live a joyful, meaningful life after religion. We admire your grace, humor, and compassion. American Atheist salutes you for your work as an atheist this past year. That just acknowledging that we as clergy people who have fought this very difficult, hard battle within ourselves and wrestled with these issues really for me were issues of life and death. Mm-hmm. Because as a person of faith, if I was wrong, I was going to be nice and toasty for eternity. Yeah. But fought those battles, came through, made our conclusions, and then having the willingness to step out, even though you're really stepping off a cliff. That just, I'm the first ex-clergy person who's ever received that award, and it's just a huge honor for me.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I've never faced such a thing in my life. I must say that is very brave of you, and it's great that that award recognizes it. We have another caller here. You want to do it, Arise?
Sure. Hi, caller. Do we have a name or a nickname for you?
Lonnie.
Lonnie. And do you have a question for Teresa?
I did. She had mentioned having to preach to the congregation, and that sometimes that would conflict with personal beliefs. And I was wondering, do you have any personal examples of when that has happened and how you felt about having to do that?
Did you hear that, Teresa?
No, it just broke up some.
She asked when you were talking about having a conflict between what your personal beliefs were and preaching to your congregation what they wanted to hear, essentially. What were your thoughts about that? How did that make you feel?
And I think she asked for an example as well.
Oh, all right. It was for me. It was a little bit of a challenge, but the trade-off for me was the fact that it was Scripture, and my thought was, well, it's just a different way to interpret it, which is true. If you take the Bible, 50 people can take it and come up with 50 different interpretations. Think about it. They used the Bible to justify slavery. Yeah. And now everybody says, oh, no, that can't be. So that was how I dealt with it. Now, a good example of that would be the teaching about the book of Revelation. A particular congregation that I served believed that Jesus was coming back soon for the rapture, and then the events of the book of Revelation were going to take place. All the tribulations, in its 7-year tribulation, God's wrath being poured out on the earth, all those things. Well, I didn't believe that. I believed that the best scholars and scriptural teachings showed that the book of Revelation was what had happened after Jesus left and the early church was starting. That they went through those trials and they went through those tribulations. So that's, what did I preach? I preached that Jesus was coming. Oh, I didn't really preach on it a whole lot, which is another way to not deal with it. But when I did, I just preached what I had to, because as the Ingersoll quote said, the clergy start out as the clergy leading people, leading the rabble, but eventually the rabble become the masters. And that's the situation I was in.
All right. Well, Lonnie, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did.
All right. How are we sounding out there in TV land with the telephone here?
Sorry?
Are you hearing Teresa well?
For the most part.
All right. Well, great, Lonnie. Have you watched the show before?
I have. I've only ever caught it halfway through until today.
All right. Well, that's great. And, of course, we want to invite you and all atheist and agnostic, free-thinking, friendly people down to Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria after the show. All right. Did you have anything more for Teresa? It will need to be quick. We hope to get maybe another call in yet.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, Teresa, when you moved up to New Jersey, you have spouse and family that came with?
My husband was not able to come. He was hoping to come up and work. The hurricane apparently saw that I was up there, and Hurricane Sandy chased me down, I guess. I don't know. No, I don't want to make light of that. That was a horrible thing. But it destroyed a lot of prospects for jobs and such, so it just didn't work out. My son, who's 23, he did come up and he stayed with me, but once I got the job offer and came back to Florida, I guess it was just luck of the draw that he didn't come on up. Although if he had, I'd have still moved back down and taken the job, but,
So now that you're back down in Florida there, are you back in the same area of Florida where you were ministering, or a different part?
Yes. No, I'm back in Tallahassee.
Do you run into old members of your congregation ever, often, never?
I do sometimes. I don't live in the side of town where they lived, where the church was. And Tallahassee, like a lot of towns, basically you exist within just the sphere around your neighborhood. So I live in a totally different neighborhood, which helps. But I have seen a few of them here and there. And generally what happens is they see me, and now I'm not going to duck and run. I mean, I'm over that part, and I'm proud of who I am. So they'll be the one that kind of turns and won't make eye contact and walks the other way.
All right.
And Teresa, we have another caller. Hi, caller. Can we have a name or a nickname for you?
Hi, how are you?
Just fine. We're running a little low on time, so if you could get your name or your question.
All right, my name is Ramsey.
Ramsey, okay.
All right, I have a question, and I'm in a class right now at UT, and we learn about different world religions and everything. Mm-hmm. And the religion that we're learning about is Islam right now. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because I'm agnostic, and my teacher is really persistent about Islam and everything. I don't think he's Islamic himself. Mm-hmm. But there's one thing that I was wondering is it's a quick question. What do you think about honey, like the food honey?
Well, I've heard that there's a large traffic in that, and in fact, I was thinking I've heard that Al Qaeda was funding some of their activities by the honey industry. Is that the tie-in you're getting at?
Well, I was wondering, beneficial-wise, isn't it healthy for the body?
Well, it's pure sugar, but it has antibacterial properties.
Yeah.
You can put it on a burn. I don't know much about the tie-in with Islam, though.
Well, it's funny because I didn't either, and then my teacher said that there's a whole chapter in their holy book about it.
Huh.
All right, well, that's new to me. Teresa, did you know anything about a chapter in the Quran about honey?
No, I mean, I know that there's thought in the Quran and in the Bible about honey and how it can be like healing, or that you're healthier, and which are some of the things you just talked about. I mean, I know if I have a cough, I can take a tablespoon of honey and it helps. Yeah. Or better, I can make tea, put honey and lemon and a little whiskey in it, and it makes it even better.
All right.
Boy, you are a lapsed Baptist.
Well, so Ramsey, I don't know that we had a lot of detail for that, but did we answer your question at least a little?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up.
Okay.
All right.
There's a lot of mention. I believe there's a land of milk and honey in the King James version of the Bible as well. So.
All right. Well, Ramsey, have you watched the show previously?
Yes, all the time, actually.
All right. So are you local?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, as we say, if you're atheist friendly, we're down at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria. We'll be there after the show today. And come and give us some more questions or tell us some more things you learned.
All right. Well, I will be there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Say bye then.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, sorry. You got you off in the middle.
So, goodness, we've got about 2 minutes or so left here, 3 minutes maybe. And Teresa, we had a visitor, actual on-air interview a year or so ago. It was Jennifer Hancock, and I know she's a humanist practicing in the secular humanism in the Florida area. Are you aware of her? Do you ever interact with her?
Oh, yeah, definitely. She's a part of our organization, Humanists of Florida. She's, a great person. She's an author. She lives down in the central part of the state, I think. I haven't met her personally yet. She and I both are speaking at the American Humanist Association conference next month. So I look forward to finally meeting her and putting a face to the voice.
Okay, well, we did her first book for book club at RET, and it was only today that I noticed that she had a second book that dealt with topics like death and suicide, the more challenging aspects of life. Tell her, please, that we're thinking about her. We've got about half a minute or so to go here. Teresa, I've been hogging the air. Do you have anything more for Teresa?
I know that's one of the things that recently I've really felt with our groups here that meet at Barley's every week is that we're forming a community, that it's more than just hanging out and having a beer. And I think that's one of those things that's very beneficial, especially I think that's why ministries target women as their congregation. Is we know that if church attendance, if the mother of the household goes, it's much more likely the whole family does. So I think community has been a very important part to you, hasn't it, in supporting you in this?
Yeah, it actually is. I mean, the Freethought movement, everybody has really just carried me through it. And, it's just, as I talk to people and travel, that idea of community keeps popping up. So actually now, that is my talk that I've been giving is using the Wizard of Oz as a stepping off point on how to build community.
Well, Teresa, that's great.
I'm a pastor. I know how to do it,
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to need to say goodbye then. We're at the last 10 seconds. Thank you so much for being on the air with us today. And we hope when you get up into this area, you'll come and visit us.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.